at the Creative Computing Institute at the University of the Arts in London, and I'm going to present today just a little bit of a background of practice and talk a little bit about the project that we're working on at the moment. It is a work in progress, so people feedback on it. It's something we're still thinking through and ironing out. So just to give a bit of a background to my practice is predominantly in the arts. So I studied art at the University of Manchester, the School of Art in Manchester in 2017. And then I really became interested in the combination of art and technology just after graduating there. So I kind of began exploring that overlap and joined Goldsmiths to study computational arts as a master's. And this was one of the first projects I ever made. So my first kind of interactive project, and it was called If You Leave It Up to the Audience, They Can Kill You. And this was inspired by Marina Abramovic's Riven Zero in 1974, which was the performance piece where she laid out a series of objects on the table and invited the audience to use the objects as and how they saw fit. And it kind of started off fairly playful, and then as the show progressed, it got increasingly more intense, and the audience formed these two groups around her. So we had one group that became the protectors and the other group which were the aggressors. So I wanted to kind of think about a contemporary reimagining of that for this piece. So I'd grown up without any technology. It was quite sheltered in my house. It didn't have the internet or social media and things, and it was kind of a personal choice of my mother's because she didn't like kind of how people interacted online, and it was always a bit of a fear. So I found it really interesting when I first went to university and began interacting on these platforms and seeing how different people could be online, and just that whole idea of almost like the Jungian id of the people of how different people act online. So this piece is a rose under a bell jar. It's a bit Beauty and the Beast now looking back at it, but it has 2 IV drips, and one has water and one has poison. And the audience members were invited to interact with this artwork by sending the rose a tweet, and then we ran sentiment analysis on it to either give the rose water or poison, depending on whether they said something nice or something mean. And then, I tend to work in lots of different mediums. So this was probably one of my latest projects. This was back in 2023. This was called Between the Lines, and it was at Science Gallery in London. This piece explored DNA data storage, and it was using DNA data storage to embed the lived experiences of people navigating the UK immigration system back into the kind of bureaucratic systems that govern them. So it was commissioned originally by Loughborough University during COVID, and they asked me to create an artwork which would work with students that were most disproportionately affected by COVID, whoever that may be, raise awareness of their experience. So it turned out that international students, one of the things that was happening is that as universities, in order to recruit international students, which are the biggest kind of money makers for UK universities, we have to have a student sponsorship licence, which is issued by the Home Office and comes with numerous compliance measures which are centred around essentially the surveillance of international students. So we have to report on things like their attendance. If we suspect, if there's patterns of them missing every Tuesday afternoon, so if we suspect they might have a part-time job or be breaking their visa requirements in any way, we're technically obligated through the student sponsorship licence to report it. I was interested in that, and how the UK immigration system had become this quite distributed, just bureaucratic system, and how within it often didn't really realise that role. So I was, obviously as a lecturer myself, I'm responsible for ticking the attendance of international students, and kind of had no idea that ultimately ticking a box could end up in deportation threats. So what was happening during COVID is that because the system hadn't caught up with what was happening in the world, people were being, because they had to isolate and they couldn't meet their visa requirements, they were being threatened automatically with deportation. So they had all of this additional stress, and often it wasn't just those, it was their families that were here under their same student sponsorship licenses. So they had a lot more stress. So we took their testimonies and encoded it into synthetic DNA, so you can translate binary data into DNA nucleotides. And then we put that into writing ink, and we posted the pens out to every administrative hub of the UK universities that had student sponsorship licenses. And we asked the recipients to become collaborators on the project. So we asked them to use the pens when they're undertaking these administrative duties, so that hopefully the testimonies can penetrate this system and end up kind of like just reconnect that lived experience back with the systems in which kind of dehumanise them in that way. It's just some images from the lab. The pens, I think there was like 191 pens in the end that we sent out to the Visa and Immigration Compliance departments. And then this is my collaborator from the current project. So I just wanted to give you a bit of background to his work as well, just so that you can understand how the project we're working on has come together. So this is the Milgram reenactment in 2002. I can't see because it's a screen thing. Oh, there we go. Made by Rod Dickinson, who I'm working with currently in collaboration with Graham Edler and Steve Rushton. So Rod does a lot of, his previous work has been a lot of historical reenactments and things. In the kind of role of like power plays within technological systems. So we've always been quite interested in each other's work. We've collaborated on a few different things. So our current project we're exploring, we're kind of recreating Garry Kasparov and Deep Blue's 1997 battle, which was this kind of deemed a seminal moment in the battle between man versus machine. And yeah, Garry Kasparov ended up losing to IBM, I think in match 6. So I've lost all my notes on it, but I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I think that one of the things that we were interested in about this match was the public kind of like, what's the word? Just engagement around it, yeah. And a lot of it was to do with people's fear of AI, and a lot of the same narratives that we still see now about AI taking people's jobs, and whether or not humans would still kind of be able to exist in the same way that they do with AI. So at the time, this was deemed as like really hard match to a hard like test of human versus AI. And obviously there's a lot of correlations between the Mechanical Turk. So the Mechanical Turk, if I'm sure most of you are familiar, but it's the 18th century automaton, which was, it toured all around the world. I think it toured for like 50 odd years, and it beat a lot of people and work out how it worked, but it turns out there was actually like a human hidden inside the machine, so it was this big like, chess-playing hoax. And one of the things that really interested us in the parallels between this is when Garry talked about, or when they analysed a lot of Garry Kasparov's match, he made like this kind of like fatal mistake in the game and stuff. And when people played against the AI, the Mechanical Turk AI, one of the things they said is that the reason that it was so successful wasn't that the chess master inside was always necessarily better than the player. It was because of this kind of uncanny valley effect and how kind of disorientating it was playing against it. So we're kind of interested in how the assumptions we make about AI is maybe putting us in like a less well-off position to kind of tackle some of the real issues that it brings about. And this is, so yeah, just move it on to some of the concepts and things we've been looking at when we've been looking at this recreation. This is a case that I think Sebastian Schmid talks about a lot in one of his papers, and it's a case between Gabriela Rojas Lozano, sorry, I'm really not pronouncing that correctly, versus Google, and it was in 2015. So Gabriela tried to sue Google for operating a highly profitable transcription business built upon free labour, which it deceptively and unfairly obtains from unwitting website users, unjustly enriching itself at the expense of website users. So Gabriela had completed 2 captures when she was creating an email account, and the first one was to prove she was human, but the second one, it turns out, was to train Google's Goodreads books machines. So she was basically training this ML system. And the outcome of this case was that the plaintiff hasn't alleged any facts that plausibly suggest the few seconds it takes to type a second word is something for which a reasonable consumer would expect to receive compensation. And the judge was actually really pissed off about, annoyed that Gabriela had brought this case forward, and they thought it was like a real waste of time and stuff, and I think they really overlooked a lot of the issues there. So what Sebastian Schmid talks about a lot is about how labour is becoming so distributed that what takes only a few seconds now to complete isn't recognised as labour. So when we're looking at this utopian future of AI in a world where humans don't have to work anymore, is that actually the case, or is it that everything's so distributed now that there's still this kind of like movement of wealth, but it's just that we don't recognise work when we do it anymore? So these are some of the things we're thinking about. And then obviously we looked into Humans as Natural Born Cyborgs by Andy Clark and Dave Chalmers. So they talk about how this is actually taken from an extract that Andy Clark wrote a little bit later, I think a couple of years after the original Humans as Natural Born Cyborgs, when he talks about how humans have indeed always been adept at dovetailing our minds and skills to the shape of our current tools and aids. But when those tools and aids start dovetailing back, when our technologies actively, automatically, and continually tailor themselves to us just as we do them, then the line between tool and user becomes flimsy indeed. So he's talking a lot about how the whole notion of humans as natural-born cyborgs is that the technologies, the tools in which we use become extensions of our mental apparatus and stuff. But now that our kind of tools are becoming also become extensions of our tools, such as when we're training captures and things like that, that kind of shift in power is quite... And Sebastian Schmid builds on this when he talks about humans as software extensions, when he describes this as a contemporary condition and configuration. We call humans as software extensions. In this configuration, people are extending computational systems by offering their bodies, their senses, and their cognition and specifically bodies and minds that can be easily plugged in, wired, and discarded. I'm just going to skip through some of these because we don't have a huge amount of time. So one of the things we've been looking at is Amazon's Mechanical Turk platform, which is named after the original 18th century automata Mechanical Turk, and it's a crowdsourced platform which allows you to send out hits, which are called human intelligence tasks, to remote workers all over the world. And these are used a lot for training image recognition data sets, so things that humans are still from a really, really young age, you're looking at a picture and saying that's a cat in that picture is still obviously very difficult for machines. So a lot of image data sets, I think like the COCO data set, for example, has been trained by this kind of big crowdsourced group of humans that are often not recognised for their labour, and often the images in which they've been scraped haven't also been acknowledged in it. So this is a piece by Philip Schmidt, who issued certificates of appreciation. He went through the COCO SD data set and found the original Flickr accounts from which these images were scraped from, and then he issued these certificates of appreciations to all of the original posters, so most of which had no idea that images had been scraped and used within this training data set. And then this is another piece by him that I really like. So it's all part of this. There's free works called Humans of AI, so I recommend looking at them if you're interested in any of these themes. And this was a slideshow, so it's like a 6-day, 20-hour slideshow, and it's all of the images that he's found. So he's gone back and he's found the original image that was used within that image training data set, and found the original post and what the caption was. So this one's 2 dogs are playing with a frisbee in tall grass. So that was how the image was labelled by probably these Amazon Mechanical Turk workers that are labelling all of these images. And then the original was posted by someone called Rebecca Siegel, and it's called Stella Frisbee Griff. And then he reflects a lot in his essay about how these dogs like have names and they have personalities. And he looks back at this dog through this person's Flickr account and sees it growing up and stuff. And he talks about how there's like a little griff in every kind of computer vision like bounding box around the dog. So yeah, I really like the slideshow itself because it's a bit like, I don't know, being at like a wedding or a funeral or something, just having this continuous, it feels like quite personal and quite intimate, but these are all of the things that have gone into these systems that are now like seeing the world. So just to quickly give you an overview of what we're doing now. So we're kind of looking at a similar thing. So we're trying to work with the Amazon Mechanical Turk workers and thinking about how we can kind of challenge or raise some of these issues around labour and how and these kind of hidden humans. So we're building a recreation of Gary Kasparov's match. So this is the set. We've 3D modelled it at the moment. We're building it physically. And we've replaced the IBM's person. So originally there's a human that's kind of getting moves from IBM and making these chess moves. We've replaced it with a robot arm now. And the idea is that you're kind of playing this AI autonomous system, but we've kind of intentionally tried to avoid using any AI at all. So every time you make a chess move, it sends out a hit, so a human intelligence task on Amazon's Mechanical Turk, so it does this in real time. So you can make a move and then within kind of like 2-3 minutes, the robot will move it back, but behind the scenes it's sending out, this is the interface that we've designed that go out to the workers, so somewhere in the world someone picks up and chooses the next move. And yeah, we really want to think about when does kind of crowdsourced human labour become AI, if it does become AI. So that's our current, as I said, it's still quite a work in progress at the moment. We're just learning how to do robotics and things, which is new to us. So it's opening in Wolverhampton next week. My robot arm, but still, yeah, doing that at the moment. Just gonna some of the things we're trying to think about at the moment is, sorry, I don't know why that's so laggy, but it's like how to kind of give this robot a feeling of sentience. So at the moment it's a bit like, we're trying to work out, we've been working with like motion trackers to make it much more natural and to try and kind of like embed this idea of sentiment. This is, yeah, the interface for the Amazon Mechanical Turk worker. I'll stop there.
Variation between